Welcome back to part two. In part one, we covered Debra's early life career and also about her journey all the way from Canada to the US to Kuwait to the Africa to Mighty to all the way to the recent role in ISS. And now she runs the Live, Love, Learn Consulting. While you were doing that, Debra, you also contributed a lot more to the gender balance, women in work, IWFM, Women in FM, and etc. Talk us through about those things as well, please, Debra.
Yeah, it was really interesting journey because when I first was approached by some amazing women who are still in the industry today about getting involved in particular IWFM, Women in FM, and I asked to be part of that organization, I just thought, why are we doing this? Like, do we really need to do this? No, I just thought it was ridiculous that we actually had to have this separate entity to highlight women in our industry. And I went to an event and one of the young women came up to me and said, you can't be what you can't see. And I was really, it profoundly hit me. I remember the day, I remember where I was. And she said, there's just at that time, you know, it's getting better for sure, but we're not there yet, as you know. But it was really a male dominated industry at that time specifically. And it's evolved and we're changing and we're adapting and we're learning and we're certainly expanding, but definitely at that time, it was so male dominant, you know. The FM events were boxing events and, you know, just things like that I just thought, you know, you're disregarding half the people who work here. And oftentimes I would be hosting a meeting and men would walk in and give me their coffee order, you know, and I'd be the chair of the meeting. And then, you know, so I'd go and get their coffee and give it to them, and then we'd sit down in the meeting and they'd realize, oh my God, you know, she's chairing the meeting. So it really, that's when it hit home that we need to give women a safe space to ask questions, to learn, to develop, to grow in a safe place. And so that was the first of it. I'm also very conscious of being quite privileged, you know, to be in a situation that I'm in. And every day I feel more and more grateful for my background, what, you know, the luck of the draw of where I was born, the parents that I was born into, and not everybody has that as an opportunity. And so really important for me to give back. So Women in FM was certainly the beginning, and we call ourselves the Wonder Women of FM. There's 10 of us around 10 of us who meet kind of still to this day, every 6 weeks, every month, you know, 2 months. And we're there for each other. And we're all competitors, like, you know, Sodexo and Mighty and JLL and CBRE and ISS, and we're all competitors, but it's not about our companies. It's about the individuals and the growth and the support. And we've been through marriages and divorces and job losses and job finds and death and, you know, all together. And we're just there for each other. And it's just, I feel so blessed to have these amazing women that we have formed to come together and support each other through good and through bad, and through celebrations and commiserations. And they're just non-judgmental, 100% behind each other. We don't sugarcoat anything, you know, we tell the truth, and sometimes that's a little painful, but we always stand for each other's greater good. So I've continued to do that. I coach 4 young women a year. As I said, I'm a certified executive coach, but I do that out of, you know, I think if I can't give an hour a week to promoting women in this industry, which is an amazing industry, then something's wrong. So there's certainly the gender balance thing that I wanted to address, but I also, you know, especially at Mighty, I had the opportunity and the authority to start to give back in different ways as well. We worked with the Passage, which was a really big changing point for us. Passage is a homeless shelter, one of the biggest homeless shelters in Victoria. And I remember it was October and I was walking to the tube and it was cold and I saw a man without a jacket. It was a really cold October. And so we started the Warm Hugs appeal. And it was about, London being the fashion icon of the world. Lots of people change their coats every year just to stay in fashion. And I thought, well, what are you doing with your old coats? Right. So we started the Warm Hugs appeal where people donate their old coats and sweaters, and we were giving them to the Passage. And there was a lovely gentleman by the name of David who was leading the Passage at the time. I said, what else can we do? And he said, really, we love this. This is great that you're doing this, but what we need is volunteers. We need time. And we need for people to hand out these coats, and we need people to work in our kitchens. And so I went back to the team and understanding that, it's not for everybody to want to do that. Some people feel very uncomfortable. And so I extended it to the whole team. I said, this is an invitation for you to come and contribute your own personal time and to see the impact you're making, face up. And so we started with every Monday morning, 3 of our team members would serve breakfast in the homeless shelter for 3 hours. And we covered the cost of that time as an organization. And I just said to people, it's an invitation, right? And I remember the first day I was so struck by what I saw and how many young men were coming for breakfast. And I said to David, why is that? And he said, well, lots of people remarry. And then that boy becomes surplus. Once they're 16, they're surplus to a requirement in the family, and they often get turfed out. And I was just so devastated. And I remember, I think it was my first or second day, because I thought I'm going to start. I'll be the first one to do it. My first or second day, and there's a young lady who was a receptionist with us, and she had to leave the space. And I went to find her. I said, are you okay? And she said, I just can't believe what I'm seeing. I can't believe the devastation, and these young men they've done nothing wrong and they've been turfed out. And so it was a really emotional time for client services. And it actually, instead of repelling us, drew us closer. And so then we launched, we continued to do that throughout my entire time. Every Monday morning, 3 hours, 3 people. But then we launched Hope and Soap, which, if you go to hotels and they give you those little soaps, and, that you pay for that as part of your room charge. So we would ask people to take those with them, and then we would give them to the homeless. We did Happy Feet, which is, again, about running shoes and anything, lots of people didn't have shoes and boots. And so we started the Happy Feet appeal. Period poverty for young women. We did a lot around that. So, it was just, and what it did was made us think bigger than ourselves, made us get out of our own heads, made us get out of the day-to-day woes and appreciate what we did have as individuals and collectively as a team. And it brought us really close together. And of all the things, I'm really proud of what we did there.
Totally, my God. I think first of all, we will aim to bring in all your Wonder Women to the show, Debra. That's first, and then and then all the philanthropic stuff. And I think that's it. The more and the reason that's why I think when I asked about this, okay, we need to document the stories of all the people who have been giving to the industry. It's important, and Debra, your name popped up many times, and then here we are. But please do stay healthy and continue to inspire us. So what we can do here is, we talked a lot about your career, some professional side of you. In between, we did share some stories, but now we will fast track it, and we will just go from personal side. But before we do that, is there any hobbies and interests that you do, Debra, in addition to your coaching and other things? Any interest that you have outside of philanthropy and coaching?
Yeah, I love food. So I love to cook. My husband and I are both, we love cooking. We love trying new recipes. I love going into different ethnic background food stores and finding something I know nothing about, a root vegetable or something, and have no idea how to use it and figure out a way to cook with it. So I love cooking. I love one of the things I really love doing in the summer is paddleboarding.
Oh, yeah.
And I paddleboard on the Thames, and it's an amazing sport in that you're very serene when you're doing it. You know, you're very relaxed, yet every single muscle you have is engaged on that board. And you have to get out of your own head. And I really enjoy doing that. I love reading, as you can see. I read, like I have books, everywhere. It's just, I love reading. I love personal development and travel. And travel for me is really important because it shows me other parts of the world, other cultures. I don't just like to go and sit on a beach or, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love doing that too, but it's more about looking at the culture and the food and the interplay between people and the way they treat families and, the pace of life. One of the two places I've really loved visiting, well, three places actually, is the Middle East, Africa, and India. And I've loved all three of those places because they're so different. When you go to Europe, it's kind of a different version of England, right? It's nothing dramatically different, but if you go to India, there's an assault on your senses, like, the sound and the smells and the colors and the flavors, and, you can't help but to pay attention, right? You have to wake up and see what's in front of you. And so I love that feeling. And I felt that in Kuwait, of course, very, very different. You're absolutely challenged by what you see, and Africa the same. So yeah, I love places that put me out of my comfort zone.
Totally. Okay, that takes us to our rapid random fire questions round, Debra. There's no right or wrong answer. Whatever comes to your mind, let it be. So if you had to write a book about yourself, what would you name it?
If I had to write a book, Perseverance.
Perseverance. Is there any book character or a movie character that you find, that person looks like me or they act like me? Anybody?
Helen Mirren. Helen Mirren is, the reason I choose her is she's constantly reinventing herself.
Totally.
Right? She's very agile. She's intelligent. She has skill. She has a freshness about her. She perseveres. She's real. She's not a fake person. She's intelligent. She's strong. Yeah, Helen Mirren.
Totally. Because you said you love cooking. So what's your biggest kitchen fail?
Failing?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh. I think we were, in our last house, we were broke. And, oftentimes you just try and make a meal out of whatever you have in the house. And so I was just trying all these different flavors together. I don't even remember what it was, but it was unedible. And we ended up ordering pizza.
Is there any favorite food that you're willing to happily have it every day, every meal?
Chocolate.
Why not? That's it.
But I do love Mexican food.
Mexican.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of the flavors. And if you cook Mexican food right, it's all natural products done simply in an explosive combination.
Got it. So if you are inviting a special guest, say from history, who would you invite and what would you make them for dinner? What would you cook for dinner?
In history? Wow. That's a really good question. Because it's two parts, right? What would I make them for dinner and who would it be? I think if I invited anybody from dinner, it would be Barack Obama.
Oh, okay.
And I would make him whatever he wanted.
Interesting. I think whenever I ask this question, I think I have to say 2/3 of the people say Barack Obama. I think, yeah, totally. That man is a wanted man. Good. So
in more ways than one. Yeah, I mean, I think Barack is such an amazing, I actually I go between being in awe of him and feeling kind of sad for him, because I think the machine let him down.
Totally.
You know, there's he and again, putting a Black man in charge of the most powerful nation in the world, you have to understand how amazing he must have been to get there. Like, you know, I think as a woman, I have to be twice as good just to get, you know, as a Black man in America, oh my God. And he intelligent, articulate, you know, probably one of the most intelligent presidents the US has ever seen. He well-read, versatile. I also loved his humanitarian understanding of people. And of course, behind every great man is an even better woman. And Michelle Obama, you know, you gotta, honestly, she kept it real. She was grounding factor. Yeah, I'd love to meet both of them.
Totally, totally. I wish that happens. So when is the last time you wrote a letter to someone?
Yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm a strong believer in writing thank you cards.
Oh, that's not nice, Debra.
So I think a lot of us just bang off an email and say a job done, but I actually have a drawer full of thank you cards. And I personally, I mean, my handwriting is atrocious, but I do think it's important. And I was taught to thank people and to be genuine and to be authentic in that. And I think if people in today's world, time is your greatest resource. So if people are giving up their time for me, I want to acknowledge that.
So if you play a song every time you enter a room, which song would you choose? Do you have a favorite song that says
Lovely Day?
Lovely Day. That's nice. So what's your favorite animal? Do you have a favorite animal?
Well, dogs. You know, we sadly lost our dog about 6 months ago. I think dogs are unconditional love. And they're fierce in their protection, and they're fierce in their love, and it's unconditional. So yeah, I think, you know, there's lots of animals. I mean, I there's only snakes are the only thing I'm not a big fan of, but you know.
Yeah, snakes, totally. So what would be the hardest thing for you to give up?
Chocolate.
I just realized maybe I should have done a different question, but I know I mean, instead. What's the greatest risk you have ever taken so far?
My husband. We barely knew each other. You know, if you think about it, we were meeting 1 week out of 6, and you know, after 6 months, so 6 weeks, we were pregnant and married. 23 years ago. So yeah, that was the greatest risk. Maybe
it worked out for you. Imagine if he stays with you maybe all the time, maybe it would not have happened.
Maybe. Here we are 23 years later and 2 years of lockdown, and we're still together. So I'm pretty sure we can do anything now. He's an amazing man. He's my greatest fan and confidant, and he's a great father. So I'm very lucky again. You know, whether that's luck or design, but to have somebody who is unconditionally supportive. You know, we role reversed. So he's a stay-home dad, and I'm the breadwinner. So you know, that takes somebody who is very secure about who they are, and you know, to be able to do that. So I'm forever in his debt.
But do you try to spend time at night without your phone?
Not necessarily at night, but I do try and spend time without my phone. About 5 years ago, I had you know, this is something that's not a lot of people know, but I had a complete emotional breakdown. And just the stress of losing parents and work, and I just completely had a breakdown. And, you know, I don't know if I would have talked about this 5 years ago, but it's, you know, when you're through it, it's easier to talk about it. And I literally had 6 months where I was incapacitated as a mom, as a wife, as a leader. My husband called this organization and said, my wife is broken, can you fix her? And so he sent me to Bali, and I went to Bali and spent 10 days on this beautiful resort called Desa Seni. And a cognitive behavior therapist came on site every day for an hour and a half and worked with me. And I spent that entire 10 days without my phone, without gadgets, without my wedding ring, without any media at all. And it taught me the value of quietening my mind and focusing on myself and redirecting negative energy. So I think it happens to a lot of us. I think it happens to a lot of women, particularly who are balancing being a mom. You know, none of us grow up thinking that, or I didn't, you know, that you would be the breadwinner and you would have all of that stress and anxiety and about feeding your family and getting people to college and braces and mobile phones and cars and, you know, like mortgages, and that you would be responsible for all of that. And to do that and be a leader of a business, you know, especially in Mighty where I had shareholders, right? And it wasn't shareholders that I didn't know or didn't see. I knew who my shareholders were. I knew their families. I knew who needed new shoes or who was going to, you know, who was getting ready for their kids to go to, you know, so the stress and the pressure of knowing that you're responsible for that. Yeah, that was, you just don't think of that when you're a little girl and they say, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? You have this, you know, rightly or wrongly, when I was a little girl, I still had the knight in shining armor version of life. And, you know, Prince Charming comes and so, you know, coming to terms with the reality of a different world, and for my husband to come to, you know, a different reality as well. So both of us have been through a really interesting journey over time. And, you know, how do you do the dance where one steps back and one steps forward? And, you know, yes, women can have it all. We just can't have it all at the same time.
Beautifully said, Debra. I think the way you articulated was amazing. I think especially we all go through that totally. You know, I went through that a couple of times after my father passed away, and then just after COVID, again, I got COVID 3 times. So it just knocked you back. But again, whoever listens to that, I think I'm sure, you know, please do ask for help, ask for support, and ensure that, you know, you look after yourself. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you, Debra. Is there any part of your life, a story that that we haven't covered, Debra, before we move into the gratitude part of it? I mean, like, is there any other things that not many people know about you that you would like to share?
I guess the only other thing that was really pivotal in my life was in June 15th, 1988, I had a diving accident.
Oh.
And I was a quadriplegic. And they said I would never walk again. So my hands came back after a few days, but it took a long time for my legs to come back. And they said I'd never walk again. And I remember thinking, this isn't happening to me. I was 22 years old, and this happens to other people, and this is not happening to me. So I said to the doctor, you need to do whatever you need to do to fix me. And I was in a small town where, you know, the medical intervention wasn't very superior. And I just kept thinking, this is not me. This is not happening to me. Mm-hmm. And of course, then it took me a year to recuperate and come back. And but now I just think I believe strongly in mind over matter. I believe strongly in the power of the mind to heal and to carry you through tough times. Right. So that was it was a pivotal moment for me. There's been a few, but that's one of them.
And I want to come back when you're being told this is it, you can't walk, your hands can't move, from there to travel to 3 continents, to take different careers, to inspire so many people. Thank you, Debra. Debra, who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Wow. So my folks, obviously, you know, my dad's the entrepreneur. My mom's the kind of more disciplined, organized. My dad was wild and crazy, and he could be wild and crazy because my mom was very much more responsible and disciplined. And yeah, she was just a grown up in that relationship for sure. My sisters, I have a couple of really good friends. in my life that have always been there, and certainly have advised me, again, not necessarily telling me what I want to hear, but sometimes telling me what I don't want to hear in order to be able to see the truth. I think professionally, there's been everything from a teacher in grade 7 called Lynn McKelvey to Dr. Sweeney for my bio teacher at University of Guelph, to Walter Loffer, who was probably my first big Walter Loffer was my manager when I was at a resort, and he really influenced me around how to not get so frustrated when people don't see the truth and what's right. And he was very patient man with me, and I was chomping at the bit, and I was young, and I wanted to do it all, and he was just an amazing person. The women in FM have changed my life. They really do. The Wonder Women are truly that. They're that in name and in nature. They've always been there. They've counseled me. They've coached, they've supported, really been quite, interestingly, Lorraine Barnett at Mighty really also helped a lot. At the time, I felt she was I don't think I was very kind to her at some times, and I felt like she was a bit of a stick in the mud, wasn't helping me to get as fast, go as far as fast as I want. But what I've come to realize, and she knows this, so, but she really was my buffer between group and entrepreneur, and she could see what I was doing, and she kind of kept the wolves at bay, if you will. And she would also tell me if I was crossing the line, and so that she really had an impact on my life.
Totally. I think you're blessed with so many people. It's you, because you are willing to give, so people are willing to give it back to you. Debra, I think, continue to do that. Also, you had a beautiful family, your husband. A few words about him.
Yeah, he's an amazing man. My husband and my kids. I learn a lot from my kids. Trust me. They teach me stuff every day. Mm-hmm. My oldest boy is a paratrooper with the British military, which is completely different from my husband and I. We're kind of peace, love, and go naked. And then we've got this. Our middle son is doing property development with Oxford Brookes, and is starting a new job in September. And he, they've both taught me different things. Growing up with all girls as well, right? Just that boy-girl dynamic. And I remember being terrified when I found out I was having a boy, because I was like, I don't know how to do boys. I only want to do girls. How do I deal with this? But yeah, they've both taught me a lot. And then having a daughter later in life, we were told we couldn't have any more kids, and then we were surprised with a lovely young daughter. And she's taught me a lot too about myself, about what works and what doesn't work, and the different, also what faces these kids today. Like the challenges that faces these kids today are millions of miles away from what we, that this social media and its stuff, for as much as it does good, it can do some real harm too. And seeing the world through her eyes has really opened up my eyes. And yeah, so my husband, he's so much nicer than I am. First of all, he's such a lovely, beautiful person. And he's just been really supportive. He's 10 years older than I am. And and he's from an English background. So the difference in our upbringings, and, his parents were very traditional. The mom stayed home and cooked and cleaned, and, they didn't have TV, and they listened to opera, and, and then I had a dad who owned a bar. We couldn't have been more. And so learning from each other and seeing, and the adaptation that both of us have made over time. And again, I talk about that dance, and sometimes we step on each other's toes in that dance, and other times we're whirling each other around the dance floor. But yeah, he is certainly my partner in life and in family, and I'm very grateful.
Debra, we talked about your personal strength, which is perseverance, and we talked about the three things. What advice you also talked about, when you travel to a country, remember you are a visitor. That's one thing you'll remember. What other advice that you would like to share to either women in FM or anybody in the world?
Learn to meditate.
Mm.
One of the things that I think I've grappled with over time is to be able to listen to myself, to listen, there's so many people telling you what to do and what not to do, and, giving you their opinion of you and of what you're doing and what's right and what's wrong. And I think that if you can find time to meditate and to center yourself and understand what's truly important to you, then those decisions become easier. And I've only learned that kind of post breakdown, because I was too involved in what other people thought of me or my decisions or what was right or was wrong. And I stopped listening to what is core to me as clearly as I should have, or it took me longer, or I agonized more. And I think if you can spend that 15 minutes every morning or every evening or whatever works for people to find where your center is, then every challenge you have in life is easily navigated.
What a brilliant piece of advice. Thank you, Debra, on that. So what's the one common myth about the FM profession that you want to debunk?
That it's boilers and bogs. This is such an exciting industry. I honestly, I remember coming from hotels and then going into FM and thinking, it is boilers and bogs. And at that time, it was certainly more blue collar-ish. But let's look at just every part, every facet of this industry, whether, technology has moved every element. If you look at engineering as an example, right, which is where people kind of think of that kind of element of our industry a lot. Technology and asset verification, asset tagging, and, kind of forward planning for how you're going to change the assets around, or when you're going to replace them, and, run to fail or replace. Just so many things are so exciting. The workplace now, and what has really happened during COVID, in some ways, again, you have to take the silver linings, is the elevation of the importance of FM has happened at such a meteoric rate because of COVID. Mm. And thank goodness it did, right? Like, we have moved so far on and now I think that corporates really understand the value that we bring in our industry, whether that's around cleaning surfaces, so the cleaners have had a bigger role. The engineers are around making sure the air quality is there. The workplace specialists around drawing people back into work and creating spaces that enable them to do their best work. The caterers around well-being. There's a great book called Time to Breathe that's out, and it's in the first couple of chapters. It says that 54% of all absenteeism is due to work-related stress, anxiety, or depression. Mm. Now, if we can solve that problem in the FM industry through the nutrition and the fitness regimes that we're able to offer, or the places or the social aspect, wow, that's an amazing opportunity for us to really change the core of any organization. One of the things that made me realize the power that we could have in this is a story about McDonald's. And McDonald's, about 10 years ago, was kind of circling the drain a little bit. They were closing more stores than they were opening. For the first time ever, growth was on a decline. And it really had the shareholders of McDonald's freaking out a little bit. Maybe it was 15 years ago. And then came out the big meal deal, right? The big meal deal saved McDonald's, right? The burger, the fries, and the drink, and really put McDonald's back, and people started to go back to McDonald's, and the value for money was there, and it really transformed the revenue intake for McDonald's. The big meal deal was Coca-Cola's idea. Mm. Do you think they will ever go to Pepsi? Mm. Right? And that's the power we have with our organizations. That's who we should be for. We shouldn't just worry about what we're doing in FM, how we're contributing to cleaning, catering, engineering, how are we impacting their core business? So, like I said, if we can solve that problem of 54% of absenteeism through what we do and hit the core of their business, then we are true partners. And I think FM, we worry a lot about ourselves. And again, look beyond yourself. Look at how we can impact their core business. I think when you start to look at how do you truly be of service to the people you serve, then I think the partnership strengthens.
What a brilliant close to the episode, Debra. That was amazing. Thank you. Debra, what are you looking forward to your immediate future?
Oh, what a question. I love workplace. I love, I've said it time and time again, it's all about culture, people, and service. I want to be able to enable people and companies to reach their full potential. I think that I have a proven track record of doing that. Expanding revenue, but also expanding minds and expanding opportunities. And that's what excites me. I want to do great work with great organizations. I do like to move at pace, and so I have to pick and choose the organization that can stay the course. But yeah, it's all about culture. It's all about people. The longer term goal is to run a B&B in Costa Rica. Interestingly, you said, we want to buy a bread and breakfast in Costa Rica, and 1 week a month, I'd like to have high potential women who are in a place where they're being challenged to answer the call of being a wife, a mother, a sister, a CEO, a CFO, a CMO, whatever that is. And they're feeling a bit burnt out, and bring them for a week with cognitive behavior therapy and nutrition and yoga and massage therapy, so that they're able to rejuvenate and go back and fight, live to fight another day.
Thanks, Debra. That's amazing. I think Costa Rica, well, it sounds amazing. So I wish you all the success. Continue to inspire, stay healthy, and thank you very much for joining the Baachu Talk FM podcast. And we'll speak to you very, very soon. Thank you so much, Debra.
Thank you, Baachu.
To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please do visit www.baachurain.com/Baachu Talk FM podcast. To this specific episode link to everything that was mentioned in this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share Baachu Talk FM podcast. We will see you at the next episode with another special guest. Until then, it's Baachu signing off.